Hello, everybody. Great to see you. Let me pause the music. There we go. Coming to you today from beautiful, sunny San Francisco, actually. And we wanted to get a beautiful view in the background, but we couldn't find a place where I could plug in, have good internet, and have a good view in the background all at the same time. So we are blurring the background instead. But welcome to our training today. We're going to be talking and going through an actual case study of a property that we bought back in 2006. Is one of our, I wouldn't say one of our first properties. It was about halfway through the list, but a property that we currently still own today. And so we're going to go through some of the numbers. Why did we buy this property? What mistakes did we make? And how did we joint venture it? How did the numbers work out for the joint venture partner? And how did they work out for us? And was it a win? Was it a loss? And so I think there's a really good reason to go through this, guys, because I think that a lot of times our perceptions of how a property is supposed to work out and then how it actually works out is sometimes mixed up a little bit. And you know what? We start to wonder, does it really work out the way we planned it to? And you're going to see in this particular property's case, it didn't. We had to pivot, we had to adjust, we had to make some adjustments along the way, and so we're going to talk about that over the next little bit here. So thanks everybody for saying hello as you come on. I see all across Canada, Panorama, Spruce Grove, Panorama, one of my favorite places on earth. Victoria, Calgary, Pickering, lots from Ontario today. So thanks for saying hi as you come on, guys. Really, really appreciate that. And you know what? Today it's just going to be real. It's going to be talking about real numbers. In fact, I'm going to show you our investor package on this particular property that we created back in 2006. There's a few highlights on that investor package that I want to share with you. Obviously, we have refined that package, and our Ignited members have a much more refined version of this, what we call now the credibility package. But I'm going to go through some of that with you today of what we shared with investors back then. And this particular one worked because we did get a joint venture partner on it. We bought this for zero money down for us. Obviously, the money partner had to put some money in. And so I'll show you how the numbers worked out and where we're sitting with it today. Awesome. If you have questions, guys, as we go through this, by all means, throw them in the chat. I'll try to answer them. And you know, whatever question it is, it doesn't matter if it's a difficult one, an easy one, we'll try to answer that for you. Okay. So why don't we just get right into it? Let me I'm going to be sharing my screen here and sharing a couple different things with you. So first off, I'm just going to take the banner off so we have a little bit more space. And we will go in and start off with our investor package that we shared. Now, here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm just going to move things around on my screen so that I can see you guys and this. Okay, so hopefully that is big enough for you to see. Okay. So our name of our company is Alberta Real Estate Opportunities. That's our property company that we have, and this was our investor package on this particular townhome. And you're going to see that the numbers here, the total cash investment was $25,000 to get into that property. And one interesting thing on this investor package that I wanted to share with you, you know, if you've been to one of our boot camps, we talk about the one-line moneymaker all the time and the importance of that. And it's very similar to what a lot of companies have, and they call their mission statement. So, you know, you word them slightly different. They might be two different things, but the point of them is it kind of gets across in one line, one sentence, maybe two at most, who you are, who you help, and what problem those people might have that you're going to help them with. And so that we call our one-line moneymaker. But you'll notice here on our investor package that we had back in 2006, and it's interesting because to me, I read it now, and it doesn't, this mission statement or version of a one-line moneymaker actually doesn't read all that well. It says creating safe and secure investment based on economic fundamentals while helping others reach their goals. So that was what we used as our one-line moneymaker or our mission statement back in 2006. And I would probably word it slightly different now. at least change it to creating safe and secure investments based on economic fundamentals. But anyways, we won't get too picky with it. I guess the point that I wanted to share there, guys, is that you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. And nothing that we give to somebody has to be perfect. And we see a lot of investors hold back from sharing information with other investors because it's not perfect yet. And you see that this page here is not color, it's not beautiful, and it's nothing special. But in fact, inside this issue, we have all of these things on 3 pages. It's nothing special, but the point is it can still get an investment, get an investor, close a joint venture deal. So I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so we shared also the numbers on this particular property, how they all work. This is similar to what we call our cash flow sheet. So you Ignited members have seen our cash flow sheet. This was kind of one of the original versions of it, which it kind of spilled onto 2 different pages in this instance. But you see, this property here, essentially, we actually assumed a mortgage of $140,000. This was the interest rate when we were assuming the mortgage, 4.25. Um, and so we were just looking to get the money down to buy this property. And one thing that I wanted to share with you on that is, let me see if I can find it on here. Is the actual down payment. So it was 25.5, but you see that we ended up doing $1,300 in repairs and rentals, 1,250 in legal costs. We had a staying power fund, a reserve fund. We actually got a management fee. We call that a transaction fee. And again, you Ignited members know what that is. This is where we make money when we do deals. We get paid to joint venture. And this is how Tiff and I actually got a lot of our income while we were in our buying phase. And so the down payment is 18,000, but the total cash required to close was 25.5, and that's what we were getting from our investor that was going to invest with us. So we ended up buying this property for $158,000. It had a $140,000 mortgage, and with all the closing costs, the investment that our investor had to put in was $25,500. Okay, we had some projections, and I wanted to share this part with you guys too, because some of the projections that we made on here was our 43-year average growth rate. Now, EREB stands for the Edmonton Real Estate Board. That's what it was called back then. It's changed names a little bit now, but that's what it was called back then. And the average over 43 years at that point was 6.33%. The 4-year average up to that point had been 9.4%. So we thought we were being conservative at a 7% growth rate. We always wanted to be on the conservative side. But as you're going to see, when it comes to our numbers a little bit later on, we weren't quite conservative enough with that estimation. So you'll see how those numbers work out. And of course, we had some numbers for our money partners as to what they would end up getting as an average ROI and a full ROI over a 7-year period. And all of our projections were for 7 years. You know, you'll see a lot of people projecting for 5 or for 10 or for 1. We always projected for 7, which is more than 5, less than 10. It seems attainable. It's not that long. It's not full 10 years, but you need time for your real estate to actually go up in value and all that sort of thing. So, so we thought 7 years was a good time period to project returns for. And so that's what we used back then. I wanted to show this page too, because this was a bit of a summary as to why this was a great property to buy. Transportation changes close by. So a ring road was going around the city at the time. Obviously, it's complete now. Complex was well managed, taken care of, very low condo fees. Property has a great mortgage in place, 4.25%. That was really good back then, guys. The cash to close is very low, $25,000. All amenities are close by, but we didn't leave it at that, which is very attractive for our tenants. So this is the point for an investor, is you always want to make your highlights good for, why do I care if the amenities are close? Well, it attracts good tenants. And then in bold here, this new property is only 16% down, including all acquisition costs. So we made that point stand out. So in your investor packages, always have a bit of a summary, guys, as to why this is a great property to buy, and throw that in there. Just some highlights, 6, 7, 5, but your top highlights as to why it's a good property to buy. Another little summary on the numbers, a picture. This was in black and white. This is literally what we sent. Um, Poor quality, but this, cameras weren't as good as they are these days. And then, of course, we had another piece of our cash flow sheet. So that was our full investor package that we sent back then. Okay, so I'm just going to unshare that now and go to the comments because I haven't seen your comments, guys. If you have any questions as we go through this, throw it in the chat. If you have any thoughts or you're not reading it right or something like that, throw it in the chat. Okay, awesome. So how did this property work out? What happened? What did we do with it? That was back in 2006. We're now in 2022, so that is 16 years roughly that we've owned this property. So let's now have a look at how some of the steps as we go through this as to how this property worked out. And I'm going to share a little infographic with you so you can kind of see how this all works out. Okay, so let's share this screen. This is a property timeline. Okay, so let me adjust this so you guys can see it and I can see you. There we go. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So here's again some things that I pick out when I look back, and it's always good to look back at some of the purchases you made and what were some of the good things, what were some of the bad things. Would you buy this type of property again? Would you not buy this type of property again? Those are some of the things that through your investing career you want to just kind of analyze, because if you keep buying the exact same thing and it's not really working out, well, maybe you need to change. Or if you are buying a certain type of property and it is working quite well, there's no reason to change. Just keep duplicating what works and become the expert on that type of property or that type of neighborhood or that particular city. And just keep duplicating what is working over and over and over again. And yes, it gets a little boring. It's not HGTV material, but it works and you become the expert at it, and you can easily attract people to invest with you if you know what you're doing in a specific segment. So this is how it worked out, guys. A few little highlights. This property was built in 2004. We bought it in 2006. So it was near new property when we bought it. And there was a few reasons why we were really attracted to this. Number one, near new property, we didn't have to worry about the appliances breaking down for quite some time. There was new windows, new doors, new siding, new roof. It's a new property, new flooring. So all of those types of things, our replacement costs, our repairs and maintenance is going to be on the lower end of things for a considerable amount of time. Okay, so that was one of the real keys to this property. In Edmonton, there's a couple other keys. 3 bedrooms always rent for more than 2 bedrooms. So the more bedrooms you have, the better, the more rent you're going to get. So we always try to get a minimum of 3 bedrooms. In Edmonton, and you can see what's on the ground in that picture, guys, there's a lot of snow. It's cold in the winters. Having a garage, even though this is just a single car garage in a townhouse, having that garage versus the townhouse across the street that doesn't have a garage, you are going to rent quicker and you're going to rent for more money. So having a garage in Edmonton was a really, really good asset as well. When we bought this property, it had a tenant in it. So the fact that it already had a tenant was very attractive. We had 0 vacancy going into the property. And you're going to see as we go through this timeline, we actually had virtually no vacancy in this property over the last 16 years. We already talked about near the ring road expansion. So it was near new transportation changes. That's always a good thing. It essentially brings people's jobs closer to them if the transportation improves. And in this particular case, there was an assumable mortgage. So the mortgage was already in place on this property. So because of that, our money partner did not need to qualify. Back then, you did not need to qualify for assumable mortgages. So it made it very attractive. You can still assume mortgages, guys. And this is a topic that we should be talking about more and more, is assuming mortgages in the markets that we're in right now. People that have low amounts of equity in their home but need to sell. assuming their mortgage is a really good strategy, because that's where you can buy a property for less than 20% down if you take over their mortgage. That's already on it. Okay, so those were some of the highlights there. So we bought this property in 2006, as you can see here, for $158,000. 25,500 was the investment that we secured on it from our money partner. We assumed the mortgage. At the time, it rented for $1,100 a month, and it cash flowed for $105 a month. Now, one thing I'll note here when I'm talking about the cash flow of $105 a month, we did not take into account in that case. Let me go back and show you, actually. I'm going to go back and show you on our original predictions for this property. I just need to bring it up again, so give me 1 second. Where are we? Right here. Okay, on our original predictions for this property, you're going to see, share screen, here we go. On our estimated cash flow, hopefully you guys can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. Okay, our monthly cash flow estimated, our mortgage, taxes, condo fees, and insurance are the hard expenses that we accounted for. We did not account for property management, which was a mistake. We did not account for maintenance and repairs, which looking back was a mistake. And we did not account for a vacancy allowance. We thought to ourselves back then, well, there's a tenant in it now, and as soon as that tenant leaves, the market was hot, we're going to fill it with another one. We don't need to account for these things. Now, if we were to account for these things, this would be a negative cash flow property. We looked at it through rose-colored glasses at the time and thought, well, it cash flows $100 a month. And we thought it's a good property. It's newer. We're going to have very little issues with it. And we're okay with that. So I'm pointing this out, guys, because some of you might be looking at properties that are tough to cash flow, maybe slightly negative cash flow. That's what this one was for us. And you're going to see in the end, it actually turned out okay, but it doesn't always turn out okay. And so that's where we want to start putting these buffers in. So if we added these buffers in, this would be a negative cash flow property. Let's go back to our summary. Yeah, $15, Simon, for monthly insurance, because it's in a condo. It, especially back then, was a lot cheaper. And I'll be honest with you, we're only paying about $25 to $30 for that same property right now, because we have multiple properties on the same policy. And the more you have, the bigger discount you get. And because it's a condo, we're not responsible for anything as far as, the paint out, that kind of a thing. That's the condo board has their own insurance. They're responsible. They will rebuild the building. We're just responsible for what's inside. The tenants are also paying their own insurance for their contents. So we're just responsible for the contents, which is very, very little, really just the appliances, that sort of stuff. And so that's why our insurance is so cheap on that particular property. Let's go back to our timeline though. Okay, so let's go down, scroll down here. Okay, so 2008 comes along, guys. The market is flying in Edmonton. Okay, actually, we hit our peak in July of 2007 in Edmonton. So, everything is still fairly warm come 2008, spring of 2008. Well, spring is in the air. We're feeling very confident. The market is doing really well. We ended up refinancing this property. Remember, we bought it for $158 right here, but we refinanced it for $250,000. That's the value. It went up $100,000, which was a big gain for this property. It was roughly 20 months or so. It went up quite a bit. And so because we refinanced, we ended up pulling out $50,000, $25,000 roughly went back to each partner. So our money partner actually got all of their initial investment back within 20 months of buying this property. So at this point, they're in for $0. And we ended up throwing a check of $25,000 into our pocket, which Tiffany and I ended up using to go and buy another property. So that's what happened in 2008. I'm just going to look at the comments to make sure nobody has any questions. No questions. Okay. All right. Yes. Thanks, Jules, for getting that on our list for a future Tactical Tuesday. Okay, so let's continue on down and see what happens. For the next 11 years, we continued to manage this property. Okay, we managed it. It did well. You'll see that we assumed a tenant at the very beginning, and you notice here, guys, that we ended up through the 11-year period only had 3 different tenants. So this was a very attractive property. The tenants that we put in wanted to stayed there for multiple years at a time, 3 years, 4 years, that sort of idea. And so it was very, very easy to take care of. And this was one of the properties, and this is one of the reasons why we still own this property, guys. It's on the other side of the city. We do self-manage a lot of our properties. And of course, Tiffany has people that take care of certain things, but we do self-manage. And this is a property we choose to keep in our portfolio because it's very, very easy. All we do is re-sign a lease every single year. There's the odd little maintenance requests that we take care of, and it just keeps plugging along. So throughout that 11 years, on average, we cash flowed about $4,000 a year. So it cash flowed quite well. And our mortgage pay down, now this was the key, 11 years of $5,000 a year starts to add up. On average, of course, it starts out less than that, and near the end, it's more than that, but on average, roughly about $5,000 a year. And here's another key point, guys, on this property, the value fluctuation. Do you see that? When we own investment properties, there were points, I think it was near 2012 or so, that the value of this property was $150,000. Now remember, we bought it for $158,000, and remember, we refinanced it at $250,000. So our mortgage in this case was, let's say, roughly $40,000 to $50,000 higher than what the value of this property was. Now, can that be scary? Absolutely, it can be scary. But I'll say this, that the value fluctuation, whether it was at 150 or whether it was at 250, was quite frankly, for us, irrelevant where the property value was. And why is that? Because we weren't looking to sell. And so this is a mistake, again, that I see a lot of investors getting into, is riding the emotional waves of property values. Okay, it's going up. I'm all excited. I'm going to buy because the market's going up. But then when it goes down, I'm going to get all scared. And then it goes down and oh, I'm underwater and I got to sell. And that's when people start to jump out and at the wrong time. And then it goes up again. And why didn't I keep that property? And then you ride this emotional roller coaster up and down throughout those 11 years of owning this property, between 2008 and 2019 in this case. But if we keep our emotions out of it, if we don't focus on the value fluctuation, instead we focus on these numbers up here. It's cash flowing. Our tenants are covering our expenses. Our mortgage is getting paid down, regardless of what the value does, going up or down, is quite frankly irrelevant in this particular case. Easy to manage, 3 different tenants. So that was the 11 years that we had this property. What happened next? Well, we got a call in 2019 on this property, and our JV partner was looking to get some money out of it. They were looking to move on to greener pastures. Actually, they wanted some money to relax in life. They were retired by that point, and they just didn't want to have money worries. And so adding some extra money into their bank account made them feel safe, made them feel good. So they wanted to be bought out of the property or to sell the property. So what did we decide to do at that point? Well, we decided that instead of selling the property, we did look at that as an option, but we also looked at the fact that this property was cash flowing. It was easy to manage. And at the particular time that our JV partner was looking to sell, it was worth $210,000. And, we decided we didn't want to sell it. We decided, let's just keep this property for a while longer. It's really a hassle-free type of property. So we thought, well, can we just buy out our partners? So what we decided to do was estimate the value of the property. So we got our realtor to give us some comparables. We also did some research ourselves. At the time, I was a realtor, so I could do my own research, but I got another realtor, non-biased information to give me some numbers as well. And our JV partners were happy with that as an estimated value. We used the tax assessed value as well. We used all those numbers to come up with what we figured the property would sell for. We estimated at that time in 2019 for 210,000. We also estimated what the closing costs would be if we were to sell that property. We would have realtor fees, we would have lawyer fees, and we would likely need to put $4,000 or $5,000 into the property to get it to the point of selling. Maybe a paint job, just small, small fixes, that sort of thing. So that we counted that up, and we ended up figuring out the numbers that our JV partners at this point were owed $35,000. We said to them, listen, if we sell, if we hire a realtor, we sell, we do a little bit of a renovation, little lipstick and rouge, we call it, to get it up to the point of selling. At this particular point, I would love to say that it was worth $300,000, $400,000, but reality is it's worth 210. Reality is our mortgage, I think, was around 130 at that point, by that point, something like that. And we have, let's say, $70,000 of equity in there after our closing costs. We would end up splitting $70,000. So you guys would get 35, we would get 35. Are you okay if we choose to keep that property and just buy you out and write you a check for 35,000? Then we don't have to go through the selling process. We don't have to wait for it to sell. We don't have to chance having vacancy. We don't have to put it on MLS and scare away our tenants who are really good. We don't have to do any of those things. We will take care of all that at the point we decide to sell. Are you guys okay if we just buy you out for 35,000? They said that's perfect. That throws $35,000 into our bank account. We wrote them a check the next day, and we bought out our JV partners. Okay, so that's how that worked in 2019. Does anybody have any questions about that to this point? So I noticed that somebody asked here, was your JV partner on title? So in this particular case, we were the ones that refinanced it back in 2008. So our JV partner was not on title. Our company was on title. And so that's the answer to that question. Yeah, so because we were on title already, it was a very simple buyout. We didn't need a new mortgage. We didn't need to worry about the mortgage side of things or the title side of things. We just bought them out because we were the ones that refinanced it. Okay, let's go back to our infographic here. Okay, so that's 2019, guys. What happened after that? I keep doing the wrong button. Okay, for the next 3 years, it's now 2022. For the next 3 years, our cash flow went up. Why did our cash flow go up? Well, our rents over the last 3 years have increased actually fairly significantly on this property. We remember at the very beginning up here, you can't see that, but we started out renting it for $1,100 per month. This property now, we're getting roughly about $1,650 per month. So our rents have been creeping up over the years. And our expenses have been going down. No, not all of our expenses. Our condo fees have gone up. Our interest rate, because it is variable interest rate, our interest rate has now gone up. But over the last 3 years, we have cash flowed roughly $6,000 a year. We're also getting a mortgage pay down of roughly $6,000 a year. And we're kind of at the point now where that mortgage that we got back in 2008 is starting to get bigger chunks of the principal paid down. These are some of the reasons why we decided to keep this property and keep the current mortgage that was on it. And in the last 3 years, we again have had a value fluctuation between 190. So we had bought it for 210, remember? And then again, we were like, oh my goodness, we underestimated again, or we overestimated, we overpaid our JV partners. And we're like, but you know what? Again, that doesn't matter. We're not looking to sell it. Last spring, it was valued closer to 250, actually $260,000 in that particular neighborhood, that particular property. So again, it has had that value fluctuation, but because we're cash flowing, because we're getting mortgage pay down, And because we have the same tenant for the last 3 years, it's virtually zero work for us. It's almost like a passive type of property. We're really doing nothing to it. We've decided to keep this property. It's very, very easy. So this is where we sit here in 2022. It's valued at roughly 225 right now. Our mortgage is at roughly 125. We're cash flowing about 615 a month, and we're getting $500 a month in pay down. So our overall returns on this particular property, we have $0 invested in it. In fact, we were paid $25,000 in 2008. You remember that, plus the cash flow we've been receiving on this property. And we currently have $100,000 in equity in it. And we currently have that same tenant that we've had since 2019. In fact, like 2018, something like that. So overall, that's how this particular property has worked out numbers wise. And I will say, has it worked out the way that we originally expected it to and wanted it to and hoped that it would? No. We bought it for 158, and today it's valued at 225,000. And maybe there's somebody here that's listening can do that math, but that's certainly not the 7% per year that we were hoping for when we bought this property. But the fact is that you can never predict that number. Did we overestimate it? I would say we overestimated that number back then. That's a mistake that we made. But with good communication with your joint venture partner, and here's another area where I see a lot of people tend to, let me just remove that, tend to miss the boat, is when things are going a little sideways in an investment, they don't tend to communicate that clearly to their joint venture partner. And so when there's that miscommunication or no communication, that's where your JV partners start to get squirmy. That's where they start to lose trust a little bit. And so guys, if you keep that communication strong, you update them on regularly, good and bad, then your JV partners know what's going on. They don't think you're trying to hide something, and they will flow with the punches. They understand that this is real estate and no one can predict what's going to happen. And in the end, they more than doubled their money. And yes, it took longer than they expected, but they more than doubled their money, and they didn't have to do any work. We did it all for them. So in the end, this was an investment vehicle that still helped them out a lot. They were able to get the money that they needed at the time that they wanted to get it. And overall, it worked out really well. So guys, I wanted to go through a case study with you just so that you saw the timelines and how things work and how things change. It doesn't always stay the way that you had planned it to. And that's okay. That's reality. That's the way it really is in real life. Okay, so let me answer some of the questions in here, guys. So Jules, 1,600. So condo fees on top of that. So 1,600 is, we're getting roughly 1,650, I think, in rent on this property. Condo fees get taken off of that. Yes. George, the 70,000 came from the difference between the 158 and the 210 and the closing costs that you came up with. Actually, George, the 70,000 came from, remember in 2008, we refinanced. And when we refinanced, we had a higher mortgage. But over time, that mortgage got paid down. And because that mortgage got paid down, what the $70,000 was the value today minus the mortgage today. And the value, that was the equity that was currently sitting in that property. So it had nothing to do with the 158 anymore, because that was dealt with when we refinanced. Remember, we got $25,000 each when we refinanced. Okay, so yes, George, okay, you already answered that question. We are about to purchase cash. We're debating to keep. So I'm not sure who this is, but we're about to purchase a cash flow property. We are debating to keep it, whether or not to keep it, or maybe whether or not to flip it. Maybe that's what you're considering. Okay, do the tenants pay insurance, water, electricity when it's long-term rental? Absolutely. In this case, we have never paid in Alberta anyways, where we are, you do not, the tenants take care of the snow shoveling, they take care of the lawn. In this case, it's a condo, so the condo board takes care of that. And they take care of their utilities as well. Yes, we didn't have a crystal ball, George. That's right. And that's why we always say that it is good to be on the conservative side when we're doing our numbers. And we were trying to be conservative then. And in fact, when the market was going nuts, well, there were some years we were getting 25% increases in Edmonton. And so we thought we were very conservative with the 7. But again, I probably would, doing that again, I would be a little bit more conservative. Okay, what kind of mortgage, fixed or variable rate? We've always just, I've seen a few questions of that. We've always had variable rate. Now might be the time where I'm starting to consider fixed, where I've always considered variable, but I will probably continue with the variable. Most of our properties now are cash flowing quite well. So higher interest rate isn't going to kill us in particular. And I like to ride that wave. I like to get it cheaper when we get it cheaper. I don't like to pay more when we have to, but that's just the ride that you take when you're on variable. And I think history has always shown that you are better off in most cases riding that wave if you can handle it long term. Okay, if you're doing this for a year, 2 years, 3 years, that may not be the case. But if you're holding this property for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years or more, you're usually better off, almost always better off, riding the variable rate. Whenever you refinance, do you stretch the amortization to 25 or 30 years each time? Absolutely. I've done that several times, Francis. That's a great question. That helps to increase your cash flow that goes into your pocket. Think of it this way, guys. If you re-amortize, and here's a key, you don't have to wait till you refinance to do that. If your mortgage is not CMHC insured or Genworth insured, if it's not third-party insured, then when you go to renew your mortgage, a lot of banks will re-amortize that mortgage at that particular time. So let's say you've had a fixed rate for 5 years and you're up for renewal and you go in and you're going to renew again. You can re-amortize it. You've paid 5 years down, and let's say you started at 25 years, now you have 20 years left. You can re-amortize that back to 25 at your new interest rate, and you're going to have a lower payment if you re-amortize. So you're sticking that, what would go towards mortgage paydown, you're putting it in your pocket every single month. Do you have any preference between single family houses and condos? Good question, guys. I like them both. I'll be honest with you. Single family houses have their pluses because you don't have condo fees, but they have their negatives because you are now responsible for the siding, the windows, the doors, the roof, the shingles, all of those sorts of things. You're responsible possibly for lawn care or snow removal, or your tenants are. So they have pluses and minuses. I'm not against Here's what I will say. What I have found, at least in our region, is I am against apartment condos. And I'm against apartment condos for the most part because that's where they include the utilities in the condo fee. And when utility rates go up, those condo fees can go up dramatically. And that's where you start getting $600, $700, $800, $1,000. I've seen $2,500 a month condo fees. And when you have those, that makes it very, very difficult to cash flow. So that's why I don't like apartment condos, but I do like townhouses, and I do like single family homes, obviously. When you refinance, did it still cash flow? It was negative cash flow, to be honest with you, at the very beginning. To us, we had blinders on at that time, and our blinders said the market is going to continue to go up, and we're not worried about a few $100s a month cash flow that's negative. And that was a mistake that we made back then. And because of that mistake, that's why we tell you guys all the time to always make sure your property is cash flowing, because that's what keeps you in long enough. We had enough positive cash flowing properties at the time to offset our negative cash flowing properties. And that enabled us to stay in it long term enough to still be here today. But if all of our properties were negative, we probably would have fire sold them and been out of this industry completely. So um, we were able to balance it with that. We were also able to make income in other ways by doing assignments, by doing wholesaling, by getting paid to joint venture, and we had other income coming in that enabled us to cover that negative cash flow. And so, yeah, good question though. Always be careful of that. If you're going to refinance, you can pull out a big chunk of money. If it's going to be negative cash flow, you better set aside a big chunk of money as well. Okay, good questions, guys. Lots of questions. Best way to find tenants. I am not the best at finding tenants. Tiffany's always taking care of that side of the business. Usually, realtors aren't don't really look for tenants. It has been, unless you're talking commercial tenants, that sort of thing. I know it does happen in some places. Uh, Best way to find tenants is advertise online where tenants look. So pretend you are a tenant. Pretend you are looking for a particular type of property. What would you Google? Do that and see what sites come up and advertise on those sites. Pretend you're a tenant would be my advice on that. Angie says we find our tenants here in Saskatoon through Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, and Kijiji. So, two good places to find tenants nowadays. As Cindy says the same thing. Another one of our Ignited members, Rent Faster and Marketplace works well. There we go. So that's where we can find some tenants. So guys, that's our case study that we wanted to share with you today. Just an overall view of what a property investment looks like. And, we continue to hold this particular property. Do we hope the value is going to go up? Absolutely. Are we confident it's going to go up sometime in the next millennium? I hope so. It's gone up a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not about that. At the end of the day, it's about the fact that our mortgage is being paid down. I think we're down to roughly about 12 years left on that mortgage now, maybe less than that, and it will be paid off. And we're at the stage now where instead of refinancing, pulling that out and buying more, I know a lot would do that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing to do. But we're at the stage now where we prefer the properties that we have left to pay off those mortgages and just have that income coming in on a monthly basis. So that's kind of the angle that we personally are going on these properties. Lots of great answers, everybody here in the chat. So thanks for sharing. And as to where you can find great tenants, that's awesome. So hopefully that gives you an overview, guys. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully this just gives you a couple of main points. And if we were to recap everything we talked about today into a few main points, this would be it. Be conservative at the beginning. Don't get emotional on fluctuations of the value. Don't get emotional on the fluctuations of interest rates. Don't get emotional on vacancy rates. Don't get emotional when it comes to these things. Just focus on keeping your property in the best condition to attract the best quality tenants. Make sure you're buying cash flowing properties so you don't have to worry about those fluctuations that will occur, guys, over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. Roll with those punches if you can. And know that it's not always going to be rosy and bright. You're going to have some downturns in the market. Guaranteed, it has to happen. So be okay with that, and just look long term. Look long term when it comes to investment properties. That's really where, imagine now this property, let's say it's worth $250,000. And let's say you have 5 of those. Let's say you have 10 of those. And, in 10, 15 years here, we have them all paid off. We have a lot of equity sitting there if we need it. But more importantly, our mortgages are paid off and we have lots of money coming in on a monthly basis that really requires little to no work. And so that's really something that you can start to pass on to your kids if you want, or you can start doing what you want with that money. That's where it can really start to make a big difference. Once you get to that point where you have that really high amount of passive income coming in. And so it takes time, though, guys, to get to that point. And that's really the point in all of this. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We will see you next week. Next week, we are doing an Ask Me Anything. That's the plan as of right now. So, any questions you have, throw them in Fearless here. Throw them make a post. Throw in a question. We are going to address all the questions over the last month in our Ask Us Anything next week. Both Tiffany and I. And then the week after that, we're going to have some guests on talking about insurance. Uh, should you get insurance on your partners? What type of insurance should you get? How much does that kind of insurance cost? If you have multiple people or companies in on a particular deal, what kind of insurance should you be looking at if somebody was to get hit by a bus? Heaven forbid it happens. We should be protecting ourselves. So we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks from tonight. So we look forward to that too. So thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next week. Ask us anything, and take care.